3 German shepherds, was crying beside a chain. He couldn't break. What baby did, next it left everyone in tears. The sound of crying dogs echoed through the abandoned lot. But what a 5-year-old boy did next will absolutely shatter your heart. Before we begin this incredible story, hit that like button, share with someone who loves dogs, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from right now. Marcus kicked a small stone along the cracked sidewalk, his tiny hand wrapped tightly in his grandmother Ruth's weathered palm. The October wind carried the smell of rust and rain through the abandoned industrial district on the edge of their small town. This was their Thursday routine, a long walk while his father David worked double shifts at the factory. Ruth always said walking helped her old bones, but Marcus knew she did it because he loved exploring. "Stay close, sweetheart," Ruth murmured, her gray hair whipping across her face. "This area gives me the creeps sometimes." That's when they heard it, a sound so desperate, so heartbreaking, that both of them froze mid-step. It was crying, not human crying, but something raw and primal that made Marcus's chest hurt. "Grandma, what's that?" Marcus whispered, his blue eyes wide. Ruth's grip tightened on his hand. "Probably just the wind through the old buildings, baby." But Marcus knew better. He'd heard dogs cry before, when old Mister Peterson's beagle got its leg caught in a fence. This was different, though. This sounded like pure despair. "We have to look," Marcus said, already pulling toward the sound. "Marcus, no, we don't know what's over there." But the crying grew louder, more desperate, and something in Marcus's 5-year-old heart couldn't ignore it. He broke free from Ruth's grip and ran toward the chain-link fence that bordered an old warehouse lot. "Marcus, get back here right now!" He didn't stop. Couldn't stop. His worn sneakers slapped against the wet pavement as he rounded the corner of the fence. What he saw made him stumble to a halt, his breath catching in his throat. 3 German shepherds were chained to a rusted metal post, their bodies pressed against each other in a heartbreaking huddle. But it wasn't just any chain. It was one massive industrial chain that bound all 3 dogs together, wrapped so tightly around the post that they could barely move. Their crying wasn't just from hunger or fear, it was the sound of complete hopelessness. The largest dog, a massive male with a scarred muzzle, lifted his head when he saw Marcus. His eyes, oh, those eyes held such pain that Marcus felt tears spring to his own eyes immediately. The dog's ribs showed through his matted fur, and fresh wounds marked where the chain had rubbed his neck raw. "Oh my God!" Ruth gasped behind him, finally catching up. Those poor creatures. The middle dog, slightly smaller with gentle brown eyes despite the suffering, tried to stand but collapsed immediately. The smallest one, barely more than a puppy compared to the others, didn't even lift its head. Its breathing was shallow, labored. Marcus dropped to his knees beside the fence, his small fingers wrapping around the chain links. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice trembling. "We're here now. We're going to help you." The largest dog's tail moved, not quite a wag, just a tiny acknowledgement that someone had finally come. "Marcus, get back," Ruth said urgently. "They could be dangerous. They're scared and hurt." "They're not dangerous, Grandma. They're sad." Marcus's voice broke on the last word. "Look at them. Someone left them here to die." Ruth pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling animal control right now." While she made the call, Marcus studied the scene more carefully. The chain wasn't just wrapped around the post. It was secured with a massive padlock that looked military-grade, with strange markings he couldn't read. The dogs had clearly been here for days. Empty food bowls lay scattered and overturned nearby. A bucket that might have held water was bone dry. "What do you mean 48 hours? Ruth's voice rose sharply into the phone. "These animals are dying." "No, you listen to me. There are 3 German shepherds chained up at the old Riverside warehouse district. They need help now." She hung up, her face flushed with anger. "Useless. They say they're understaffed, and it's not an emergency unless the animals are attacking someone." Marcus had started humming softly, a lullaby his mother used to sing before she died last year. The melody drifted through the fence, and something remarkable happened. The largest dog's crying quieted. He tilted his head, ears perking slightly despite his weakness. "Keep singing, baby," Ruth whispered, noticing the change. Marcus's small voice grew stronger, the words coming back to him. Stars are watching from above, wrapped in moonlight, wrapped in love. All 3 dogs turned toward him. Even the smallest one managed to lift its head slightly. Their crying had stopped completely, replaced by soft whimpers that seemed to match the rhythm of his song. "Grandma, look at their ears," Marcus said suddenly. Ruth squinted through the fence. Each dog had something tattooed inside their right ear, a series of numbers and letters that looked official, military even. "Those aren't normal strays," Ruth muttered. "Those look like service numbers." The largest dog struggled to his feet and limped as close to the fence as the chain would allow, which wasn't far. Maybe 2 feet from the post. He pressed his nose against Marcus's small fingers through the chain link, and Marcus felt the dry, cracked texture of the dog's nose. "You're burning up," Marcus said, alarmed. "Grandma, he has a fever." They all might. Ruth was already moving. "There's a convenience store 2 blocks back. I'm getting water and food. Do not move from this spot, and do not put your hands through that fence again." "But Grandma," "Marcus, I mean it. Those dogs are suffering, but they're still animals in pain. They could bite without meaning to. Promise me." Marcus nodded reluctantly. "I promise." As Ruth hurried away, Marcus sat cross-legged on the cold ground, maintaining eye contact with the largest dog. "I'm going to call you Thunder," he said softly, "because I bet you were really strong once. And you," he looked at the middle dog with the gentle eyes, "you're Storm. You look like you've been through one." His gaze fell on the smallest, weakest dog. "And you're Rain because—" his voice caught. "Because Mom always said rain brings new life." Thunder made a sound deep in his throat, not quite a bark, more like acknowledgement. His intelligent eyes never left Marcus's face. That's when Marcus noticed something else. Thunder wasn't letting the other 2 dogs come forward, even though they tried. He was protecting them, keeping his body between them and the fence despite his own suffering. Pack behavior, Marcus remembered from a nature documentary. The alpha protects the others. A van drove by slowly on the access road behind the warehouse. It was black, with tinted windows, and it slowed almost to a stop when it passed the lot. All 3 dogs immediately went rigid. Thunder let out a low, menacing growl despite his weakness. Storm pressed against Rain, trying to shield the smaller dog. Marcus felt his heart racing. The van's engine idled for a long moment, then suddenly accelerated away. The dogs remained tense for several minutes after it disappeared. "You know that van," Marcus whispered. "The people who did this to you, they come check on you, don't they? To make sure you're still—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Thunder's growl confirmed his suspicion. Ruth returned 15 minutes later, carrying 2 plastic bags. "I got dog food, water, even some blankets from my car," she said, breathing heavily from the rush. "The store clerk said he's seen that chain before. Says it's military grade, would need special cutting tools to break it." They pushed water bowls through a gap under the fence. Thunder approached first, cautious, then began drinking desperately. But after just a few laps, he stepped back, barking softly at the other 2. Only after Storm and Rain had drunk their fill did Thunder return to the bowl. "He let them drink first," Ruth said, amazed. Even dying of thirst, he protected them. Marcus pushed small handfuls of dry dog food through the fence. Again, Thunder made sure the others ate before taking anything for himself. Rain could barely swallow, the food seeming to stick in his throat. "The little one's really bad, Grandma," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "He's going to die if we don't do something." Ruth was on her phone again, this time calling David. "You need to come to the old Riverside warehouse right now. Yes, I know you're working. David, your son found 3 dying military dogs. Just come." While they waited, Marcus noticed more details. All 3 dogs. They had similar scars, not random injuries, but what looked like old shrapnel wounds. Thunder's left hip showed signs of surgery. Storm was missing the part of an ear. These weren't just military dogs. They were veterans. "Look at this," Ruth said, pointing to scratches in the dirt near the post. "They tried to dig out. See the blood on the ground? They dug until their paws bled. The black van drove by again, slower this time. Marcus could swear he saw it stop just out of sight around the building's corner. His skin prickled with fear. "Grandma, that van—" "I see it," Ruth said quietly, pulling Marcus closer to her. "If they come over here, we run. Understand?" But the van stayed hidden, engine running, waiting, watching. David's truck pulled up 20 minutes later, his work clothes still covered in factory dust. "What's this about military?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the dogs. "Jesus Christ!" "Language," Ruth said automatically, though her heart wasn't in the scolding. David was already examining the scene with different eyes, a veteran's eyes. He'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before Marcus was born. "These are definitely military working dogs," he said, kneeling beside the fence. "Look at their stance, even chained up. They're maintaining formation." "Formation?" Marcus asked. "Thunder? That's what you called him?" "He's in point position. Storm is flanking. Rain looks like he was a tracker, probably youngest of the unit." David's jaw clenched. Someone dumped war heroes here to die. He pulled out his phone and started making calls to old military contacts. Marcus heard him mentioning the tattoo numbers, describing the dog's conditions. His father's face grew darker with each conversation. "What is it?" Ruth asked when he hung up. David looked at Marcus, clearly debating how much to say in front of his son. "These dogs were reported destroyed 6 months ago, after their handler was killed in action." "Destroyed?" Marcus's voice rose. "What does that mean?" "Put to sleep," David said gently. "When a military dog's handler dies, sometimes they can't be retrained for another soldier. They're supposed to be humanely—" "But someone didn't do it," Ruth interrupted, understanding. "Someone sold them instead." David nodded grimly. "There's a black market for military dogs. Fighting rings pay top dollar for animals with combat training." He looked at the wounds on Thunder's neck. But these 3 didn't cooperate, so they were dumped. The black van's engine revved suddenly, making all of them jump. It pulled out from behind the building and drove past slowly, deliberately. Marcus caught a glimpse of 2 men in the front seat. They were looking directly at them. "We need to get these dogs free now," David said urgently. "Those might be the people who—" Rain suddenly collapsed completely, his breathing becoming a horrible raspy wheeze. His body convulsed once, then went still. "No!" Marcus scrambled against the fence, reaching through. Despite Ruth's earlier warning, his small fingers just barely reached Rain's fur. "Please don't die! Please!" Thunder and Storm both began howling, a sound so mournful it seemed to pierce the darkening sky. Marcus was sobbing now, his whole body shaking as he tried to reach the fallen dog. "Sing," David said suddenly, remembering what Ruth had told him on the phone. "Marcus, sing the song, now." Through his tears, Marcus began the lullaby again, his voice breaking on every other word. "Stars are watching from above." Rain's leg twitched, then again. The small dog's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Marcus's tear-streaked face through the fence. "That's it," Marcus whispered. "Stay with us, Rain. Please stay." David was already on the phone with Dr. Elena, the veterinarian who treated their old cat. "I don't care if you're closed. This is an emergency. 3 military dogs, dying, the old Riverside warehouse. Please." Night was falling, the temperature dropping. Ruth wrapped one of the blankets around Marcus's shoulders, but he immediately pushed it through the fence toward the dogs. Thunder grabbed it gently in his teeth, pulling it over Rain's shivering form. "I'm not leaving them," Marcus announced. "Not tonight, not ever." "Marcus, we have to go home," Ruth said gently. "It's getting dark and cold." "Then they'll die alone in the dark and cold." Marcus's voice rose to nearly a scream. "Just like Mom did." "And I wasn't there for her either." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. David knelt beside his son, pulling him into a tight hug. "Your mom wasn't alone, buddy. The nurses were with her, and she knew how much you loved her. But I wasn't there." Marcus sobbed into his father's shoulder. "And now Rain's dying and Thunder's sick and Storm can barely stand, and I can't help them because of this stupid chain." He pulled away from his father and grabbed the massive padlock, pulling with all his 5-year-old might. The metal didn't budge, but Marcus kept pulling until his hands were red and raw. "Stop, baby," Ruth said, tears in her own eyes now. "You'll hurt yourself." "I don't care," Marcus shouted, but exhaustion was overtaking him. He slumped against the fence, his small body shaking with sobs. Thunder dragged himself as close as the chain would allow and pressed his nose against the fence where Marcus's face rested. The big dog whined softly, and somehow Marcus understood. Thunder was trying to comfort him, "I won't leave you," Marcus whispered. "I promise. Even if everyone else gives up, I won't." Dr. Elena's van pulled up, headlights cutting through the growing darkness. She took one look at the scene and immediately went into emergency mode. "That smallest one is in critical condition," she said, pulling supplies from her van. "I need to get fluids in him now." "The fence," David said. "We can't—" "Doctor." Elena produced heavy-duty bolt cutters from her van. "Always prepared," she said grimly. She cut a hole in the fence just large enough to squeeze through. "Careful," Ruth warned. "They're traumatized." They might. But Thunder did something unexpected. As Dr. Elena approached slowly, hands visible and movements calm, the big dog stepped aside. He actually moved to give her access to Rain, though it clearly caused him pain to shift with the chain. "He knows I'm here to help, Doctor," Elena said, amazed. "The intelligence in these animals—" She quickly set up an IV for Rain, working by the light of her headlamp. "This one might not make it through the night. The other two need immediate treatment as well, but I can't do much with them chained like this." She examined the padlock under her light. "What the hell? This isn't just military grade. There are electronics in this lock. See the small panel? It's some kind of smart lock." David looked closer. "I've seen these in the military. They're used for high security applications. You need either the electronic key or—" He paused, studying the lock more carefully. "This model has voice recognition." "Voice recognition?" Marcus asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "It responds to specific command phrases. But we'd need to know what phrase was programmed." The black van returned, this time with its headlights off. It parked across the street, engine still running. Two men got out, their faces hidden in shadow. "Can we help you, gentlemen?" David called out, his hand moving to his pocket where Marcus knew he kept a knife. "Those are our dogs," one man said. His voice was cold, flat. "We have paperwork. You're trespassing." "These dogs were reported destroyed by the military," David responded. "So, I'm very interested to see this paperwork." The second man stepped forward, and the streetlight illuminated his face. He was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that made Marcus press closer to his grandmother. "There's been a misunderstanding. We're from a private security company. These dogs were sold to us legally after their service. They're valuable assets." "Assets?" Marcus stepped forward despite Ruth trying to hold him back. "They're not things. They're heroes, and you left them here to die." The man's smile widened. "Kid's got spirit. Look, we can resolve this peacefully. We'll take the dogs and go. No need for complications." "They're dying, Doctor," Elena said firmly. "They need immediate medical treatment. That's our concern, not yours." David pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "I wouldn't do that," the first man said. Something in his tone made everyone freeze. These dogs witnessed certain activities that some people would prefer stayed quiet. It would be unfortunate if anyone else got involved in this situation. It was a threat, plain and simple. Marcus felt his father's body tense beside him. "You're threatening a child?" Ruth's voice was sharp with outrage. "We're suggesting everyone minds their own business." The man reached into his jacket, and David immediately pushed Marcus behind him. But instead of a weapon, the man pulled out an official-looking document. Signed transfer of ownership. "These dogs belong to Blackwater Securities Incorporated. We'll be taking them now." "Over my dead body," David said quietly. The tension in the air was electric. Thunder, despite his weakness, began growling. It was a sound from deep in his chest, primal and warning. Storm joined him, and even Rain, barely conscious, managed a weak snarl. "Seems the dogs have an opinion, Doctor," Elena said. "And as a veterinarian, I'm declaring these animals unfit for transport. Moving them now would be animal cruelty, which is a crime I can report." The two men exchanged glances. The smiling one's expression never changed, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "We'll be back tomorrow with a court order and our own veterinarian. I suggest you all go home and forget you ever saw these animals." They walked back to their van, but before getting in, the smiling man turned back. "Oh, and if anyone's thinking of trying to free them or move them, don't. We have eyes everywhere. It would be a shame if something happened to that beautiful dog rescue story." The van drove away, leaving them in stunned silence. "We're not really going to leave them, are we?" Marcus asked in a small voice. David's jaw was clenched so tight, Marcus could see the muscles jumping. No, we're not. He looked at Doctor. Elena, can you stay with them for a bit? I need to make some calls. While David walked away, phone pressed to his ear, Marcus sat back down beside the fence. Thunder had dragged himself back to the same spot, maintaining his vigil even as his own body failed him. Those men want to make you fight other dogs, don't they? Marcus whispered. Thunder's eyes confirmed what Marcus had guessed. But you won't do it. None of you will. You're protectors, not killers. Dr. Elena worked through the night, administering what treatment she could through the fence. She managed to stabilize Rain, though he remained critical. Storm accepted antibiotics for infected wounds on his paws, from digging, just as Ruth had suspected. Thunder refused treatment until the other two were cared for. His loyalty is extraordinary, Doctor, Elena murmured. I've never seen anything like it. David returned with grim news. My contact in the military says these dogs were part of a special unit. They saved dozens of lives in combat. Their handler, Sergeant James Mitchell, was killed in an IED explosion. The dogs were supposed to be retired with honor, possibly adopted by Mitchell's family. Instead, someone in the chain of command sold them illegally. Can't the military do something? Ruth asked. They're investigating, but it takes time. And those men were right about one thing. These dogs were witnesses to something. My contact wouldn't say what, but he said it goes high up. People with power want these dogs to disappear. Marcus had been quiet, thinking hard with his 5-year-old brain. Dad, you said the lock has voice recognition? Yeah, but we don't know the command. What if? Marcus paused, an idea forming. What if it's not a military command? What if Sergeant Mitchell made it something else? Something only someone who really cared would say? David looked at his son with surprise. That's actually possible. Mitchell might have programmed it himself before what happened to him. Try military commands anyway, Doctor, Elena suggested. David went through every command he knew. Release, open, freedom, liberty. Nothing worked. The lock remained sealed. Marcus stood up, approaching the lock. He thought about what he would do if he wanted to protect something he loved. What would he make the password? You're good boys, he said clearly to the lock. Nothing. Heroes, nothing. He looked at Thunder, Storm, and Rain. What would their handler have wanted for them? You deserve love, Marcus said softly. The lock made a small electronic beep, but didn't open. Everyone froze. You triggered something, David said excitedly. Try variations. Marcus thought harder. What would a soldier say to dogs he was trying to protect? You deserve to be loved. Another beep, louder this time. A small LED on the lock flashed red. You deserve a home, Marcus tried. The LED flashed yellow. His heart was racing now. He was close. He could feel it. What would someone who loved these dogs want most for them? You deserve... Marcus paused, tears filling his eyes as he looked at the 3 suffering animals. He thought about his mother, about love, about sacrifice. You deserve peace. The lock clicked open. For a moment, no one moved, unable to believe it had actually worked. Then the chain fell away with a loud clatter, and Thunder collapsed immediately, his legs no longer able to support him without the chain's tension. Careful! Dr. Elena rushed forward. They're going to be disoriented and possibly defensive. But Thunder just lay there, his tail wagging weakly as tears, actual tears, leaked from his eyes. Storm crawled to him, pressing against his side. Rain managed to lift his head, looking directly at Marcus with eyes that held such gratitude it took everyone's breath away. Marcus dropped to his knees beside Thunder, his small hands gently touching the dog's matted fur. It's okay now. You're free. You're all free. David was examining the lock, which had opened to reveal a small compartment. Inside was a flash drive and a folded piece of paper. He read it quickly, his face going pale. What is it? Ruth asked. It's from Sergeant Mitchell. He says he knew someone was going to try to kill his dogs. He programmed the lock himself before his last mission. He wanted them to be found by someone with a pure heart, someone who would see them as more than weapons or assets. Marcus wasn't listening. He was focused entirely on the dogs, who were slowly realizing they could move. Storm stood first, shaky but determined. He took 3 steps, then collapsed. But his tail was wagging. After months of captivity, he could move those 3 steps, and it was everything. Thunder tried to stand, but couldn't. The months of supporting the others, of staying strong, had taken everything from him. Dr. Elena quickly examined him. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, infected wounds, possible organ damage. All 3 need immediate hospitalization. She looked at the approaching headlights on the access road. And we need to move them now. Those men will be back. But it wasn't the black van. 3 pickup trucks pulled up, and veterans started climbing out. David's phone calls had worked. Within minutes, there were a dozen former soldiers surrounding the dogs, creating a protective barrier. "Anyone tries to take these heroes, they go through us," announced a grizzled man with a prosthetic leg. "These dogs saved my unit in Kandahar. Thunder here found an IED that would have killed us all." More vehicles arrived. Someone had posted on social media, and it was spreading fast. Soon there were 30 people, then 50. Veterans, civilians, families with children. They brought blankets, food, water. Someone set up lights. A news van pulled up. The black van appeared at the end of the street, but seeing the crowd, it reversed and disappeared. "We need to move them," Dr. Elena insisted. "Rain especially. He needs surgery." The veterans formed a human stretcher, gently lifting each dog. Thunder resisted, trying to stay alert, to protect even now. "It's okay, soldier," the grizzled veteran said softly. "Stand down. We've got the watch now." Thunder finally relaxed, allowing them to carry him. As they loaded the dogs into Dr. Elena's van, Marcus climbed in too. "Marcus, you need to come home," Ruth said. "No?" His voice was firm in a way Ruth had never heard from her 5-year-old grandson. "I promised I wouldn't leave them. Thunder protected Storm and Rain all this time. Now it's my turn to protect them." David and Ruth exchanged looks. "Let him go," David said finally. "I'll follow in my truck." As the van pulled away, Marcus sang his mother's lullaby again, his small hand resting on Thunder's head. The big dog's eyes never left his face, and for the first time since they'd found them, his tail wagged with something that looked like hope. But through the back window, Marcus saw the black van following them, keeping pace 3 cars back. The men weren't giving up. This was far from over. The animal hospital was in chaos when they arrived. Dr. Elena had called ahead, and her entire night staff was ready. The 3 dogs were rushed into separate treatment rooms, but Thunder began thrashing when they tried to separate him from the others. "He won't let us treat him if he can't see them," Dr. Elena realized. "Move them all to the surgical suite. We'll work on them together." Marcus wasn't allowed in the surgical suite, but he pressed his face against the observation window, watching as the medical team worked. IVs were inserted, wounds cleaned, medications administered. Rain went into cardiac arrest twice. Both times, Thunder somehow knew, whining and trying to reach him despite his own sedation. "The bond between them," one of the vet techs said in amazement. "I've never seen anything like it." 3 hours into treatment, the black van men arrived at the hospital with 2 police officers. "We have a court order," the smiling man announced, waving papers. "These dogs are legally our property, and you're harboring stolen goods." The officers looked uncomfortable. One of them, Officer Bryant, was a veteran himself. "Sir, we need to execute this warrant." "Those dogs are in critical condition," Dr. Elena said firmly. "Moving them would kill them." "That's not our problem," the smiling man said. "We want our property." "Property?" Marcus's voice rang out clear and strong. Everyone turned to look at the 5-year-old boy standing in the waiting room doorway. "They're not property. They're Thunder, Storm, and Rain. Thunder has a scar on his hip from saving people. Storm is missing part of his ear from protecting his unit. Rain is just a baby who never even got to be a puppy because he was too busy being a hero." The news cameras were rolling, broadcasting live. Marcus didn't know or care. "And you," he pointed at the smiling man, "you want to make them fight. You want to take everything good and brave about them and turn it into something ugly. But you can't, because they'd rather die than become what you want them to be. That's why you chained them up to die slowly, because they wouldn't break." The smiling man's expression finally changed, anger flashing across his features. "Listen, you little..." "No, you listen. David stepped beside his son. "My boy is right, and everyone watching knows it." He gestured to the growing crowd outside, to the news cameras, to the dozens of phones recording. "You might have papers, but we have the truth." Officer Bryant looked at the warrant more carefully. "This court order is from Judge Hamilton in the next county. He has no jurisdiction here." "It's valid across state lines," the second man argued. "Maybe, but I need to verify it." Bryant pulled out his phone. "Until then, nobody's moving those dogs." The smiling man stepped toward Marcus, and instantly a wall of veterans moved between them. "Touch the kid, and you'll need your own hospital bed," the grizzled veteran said quietly. Dr. Elena emerged from the surgical suite, exhaustion written on her face. "Rain's stable but critical. Storm has severe infections but should recover. Thunder..." She paused. "Thunder has organ failure. His kidneys are shutting down from dehydration and the stress of supporting the others for so long. He needs dialysis immediately, or he won't make it through the night." "We don't have a dialysis machine for dogs that size," the tech said quietly. "The human hospital does," someone in the crowd said. "My wife works there. They have veterinary partnerships for special cases." "They'd never approve it in time, doctor," Elena said despairingly. Marcus walked past everyone, straight to the surgical suite door. Through the window, he could see Thunder on the table, his breathing labored. The big dog's eyes were open, watching the door as if waiting. "He's looking for me," Marcus said. "Let me in." "It's sterile," a tech began. "Let him in, doctor," Elena said quietly. "Get him a surgical gown and mask." Minutes later, Marcus stood beside Thunder, his small hand on the dog's massive head. "You can't die," he whispered. "Storm and Rain need you. I need you. You fought so hard to keep them safe. Now you have to fight to stay with them." Thunder's tail moved slightly, the smallest wag. Marcus began singing the lullaby again, his voice carrying through the surgical suite. On the other tables, Storm and Rain's monitors showed their heart rates stabilizing, responding to the familiar sound. "Their vitals are improving," a tech said in amazement. "All three of them, just from the boy's voice." Outside, the crowd had grown to hundreds, veterans, families, people who'd seen the live broadcast. They surrounded the animal hospital, creating a human barrier. The black van men couldn't leave without pushing through them. Someone started singing the national anthem. Others joined in. Soon hundreds of voices rose in unison, a sound that carried through the hospital walls. Officer Bryant finished his phone call. "Judge Hamilton's office says they have no record of this warrant. It's fake." The smiling man's composure finally cracked completely. "You don't understand who you're messing with. These dogs are worth millions on the underground market. The people I work for don't accept failure." "Then they should have chosen better employees," Bryant said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for falsifying court documents, attempted theft, and animal cruelty." As the men were led away, they passed close to the surgical suite window. The smiling man locked eyes with Marcus through the glass. "This isn't over, kid," he mouthed silently. Marcus didn't flinch. He kept his hand on Thunder's head and kept singing. Dr. Elena made the decision. "We're transferring Thunder to the human hospital." "Now?" "He won't make it otherwise." The crowd parted as Thunder was loaded into an ambulance, Marcus beside him. Storm and Rain were stable enough to stay, but as Thunder was wheeled away, both dogs began howling. "Wait," Marcus said. "They need to see each other." Just for a second. The paramedics paused, wheeling Thunder's gurney close to where Storm and Rain lay. The three dogs touched noses briefly, and Thunder gave a soft whine that sounded like a promise. Then he was gone, racing through the night toward the hospital, Marcus's small hand never leaving his fur. The human hospital had never treated a dog before, but the staff had seen the broadcast. They were ready. As Thunder was wheeled into the dialysis unit, Marcus heard someone say, "If this dog saves soldiers' lives, we're going to save his." Through it all, Marcus kept singing. When his voice grew hoarse, he hummed. When he couldn't hum anymore, he just whispered the words. Thunder's eyes never left his face. "His kidney function is improving," a doctor announced after 2 hours. "It's working." Dawn was breaking when David found Marcus asleep in a chair beside Thunder's bed, his small hand still resting on the dog's paw. Thunder was awake, watching the boy with eyes that held more than animal intelligence. There was understanding there, and gratitude, and something that looked very much like love. "The other two?" David asked Dr. Elena, who had just arrived. "Recovering. Storm's infection is responding to antibiotics. Rain is young and resilient. He's actually doing the best of the three now. And Thunder? The dialysis saved him. His kidneys are functioning again. It's honestly miraculous. By all medical logic, he should have died last night." David looked at his sleeping son, whose other hand was clutched around something. Gently, he pried open Marcus's fingers. It was a photo the boy must have grabbed from home, his mother, smiling, holding Marcus as a baby. "He brought her with him," David said, his voice thick with emotion. Thunder's tail wagged once, as if he understood. When Marcus woke up, the first thing he saw was Thunder's eyes, clear and bright for the first time since they'd found him. "You made it," Marcus whispered. Thunder responded by gently licking the boy's face, his tail wagging stronger now. "Can we see Storm and Rain?" Marcus asked. The reunion at the animal hospital was broadcast live. When Thunder was wheeled in, Storm and Rain both tried to stand despite their IVs. The three dogs pressed together, whining and crying, but this time it was joy, not despair. Marcus sat in the middle of them, and all three dogs arranged themselves around him protectively. Thunder on his right, Storm on his left, Rain across his lap. "They've claimed him, Doctor," Elena said softly. "In their minds, he's part of their pack now." But even in this moment of triumph, Marcus saw his father's worried expression. The men had been arrested, but they'd mentioned people they worked for. This wasn't over. That night, while the dogs recovered and the world celebrated their rescue, Marcus overheard his father on the phone. "Yes, sir." The flash drive from the lock. "It contains classified information about illegal dog fighting rings run by military contractors. Names, dates, transactions." "Yes, sir. We'll turn it over to the FBI tomorrow." Marcus understood then. Thunder, Storm, and Rain weren't just abandoned dogs. They were witnesses to something much bigger. And the people who wanted them dead wouldn't give up easily. But looking at the three dogs sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, Marcus made a decision. Whatever came next, whatever danger they faced, he wouldn't let anyone hurt them again. He'd found them crying beside a chain they couldn't break, and he'd freed them with nothing but love and determination. Now they were his to protect, and he was theirs. The black van was spotted again that night, circling the hospital, but this time it wasn't alone. Veterans had set up a rotating watch. Every entrance was guarded. These dogs had saved lives, and now it was time to return the favor. Marcus fell asleep in the hospital room, surrounded by three German shepherds who had gone from crying in chains to sleeping in peace. But even in sleep, Thunder kept one eye slightly open, forever watchful, forever protective. Because that's what heroes do. They protect each other. And this story was far from over. The morning after the reunion brought no peace. Marcus woke to urgent voices in the hallway outside the recovery room, where he'd spent the night with Thunder, Storm, and Rain. His father was arguing with someone, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You can't just take them," David was saying. "They're still recovering." "Mr. Matthews, I understand your concern, but these dogs are evidence in a federal investigation now." The voice was cold, official. "The FBI needs to secure them immediately." Marcus sat up quickly, causing Rain to stir on his lap. The smallest dog immediately sensed his distress and pressed closer, whimpering softly. Thunder's eyes snapped open, instantly alert, despite the IV still attached to his leg. Storm raised his head, ears perked toward the door. "They know something's wrong," Marcus whispered, his heart racing. The door opened and three people in dark suits entered, followed by David and Dr. Elena. The woman in charge held up a badge. "Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. We need to relocate these animals to a secure facility." "No!" Marcus's voice cracked as he stood up, positioning himself between the agents and the dogs. "You can't take them!" They just got free. Thunder struggled to his feet despite his weakness, moving to stand beside Marcus. His legs shook, but his stance was protective. Storm and Rain flanked them, creating a united front that would have been intimidating if they weren't all still attached to medical equipment. "Son, we're trying to protect them," Agent Chen said, her voice softening slightly. "The people who wanted them dead have connections everywhere. This hospital isn't secure." "Then make it secure," Marcus shot back. "Don't lock them up again." They've been locked up their whole lives. Dr. Elena stepped forward. Agent Chen, medically speaking, moving them now could cause serious setbacks. Thunder especially, his kidneys are barely functioning. The stress of relocation could kill him. We have veterinary facilities. Do you have a 5-year-old boy who they trust? David interrupted. Because that's what kept them alive last night. Not just medical equipment, him. He pointed at Marcus. They've bonded with him in a way I've never seen. You separate them now, and you might lose your witnesses. Agent Chen studied the scene. The 3 German shepherds arranged protectively around a small boy, all of them ready to fight despite their injuries. The flash drive contained intelligence about a network of military contractors running illegal operations. These dogs were present during meetings, transactions. Their handler, Sergeant Mitchell, was gathering evidence when he was killed. Killed? David's face darkened. His death wasn't from an IED? We believe he was murdered when he got too close to exposing the truth. These dogs are the only living witnesses to what really happened. Marcus felt Thunder tense beside him. The big dog understood more than anyone realized. Thunder knows who killed his handler, doesn't he? Marcus said quietly. That's why they wanted him dead most of all. He saw it happen. Agent Chen's eyes sharpened. What makes you say that? Look at him when you say Sergeant Mitchell's name, Marcus said. Sergeant Mitchell, Agent Chen said clearly. Thunder's entire demeanor changed. His head lowered, a mournful whine escaping his throat. But his eyes burned with something that looked like rage. He wants justice, Marcus said simply. Not protection, justice. Before Agent Chen could respond, her phone buzzed urgently. She answered, her face paling as she listened. When? How many? Understood. She hung up, immediately barking orders to her team. The hospital's been compromised. We have multiple hostiles approaching from 3 directions. Local law enforcement has been told to stand down. Someone high up is pulling strings. How long? David demanded. 10 minutes, maybe less. The room erupted in controlled chaos. FBI agents spoke rapidly into radios, coordinating defensive positions. But Marcus noticed something they had all missed. Thunder had moved to the window, his body rigid with tension. He wasn't looking at the parking lot where the agents expected trouble. He was looking at the roof of the adjacent building. They're not coming from below, Marcus said urgently. Thunder sees something on the roof. Agent Chen followed the dog's gaze just as a glint of sunlight reflected off something metallic. Sniper! Everyone down! The window exploded inward as Agent Chen tackled Marcus to the floor. Thunder threw himself over the boy, his body a living shield. Storm and rain pressed flat, their training taking over even through their injuries. They're not trying to steal them, Agent Chen gasped, glass crunching under her as she moved. They're trying to eliminate them. More windows shattered. The FBI agents returned fire, but they were pinned down. The attackers had planned this perfectly, trapping them in the recovery room. The basement, Doctor, Elena said suddenly. There's an old service tunnel that connects to the parking garage. It was used during renovations. Can the dogs make it? David asked. Thunder was already struggling to his feet, blood seeping through his bandages where glass had cut him. Storm limped badly and Rain could barely walk, but all 3 were ready to move. They'll make it, Marcus said firmly, because they're heroes. Agent Chen made a decision. 2 agents with me. Everyone else maintains position here, makes them think we're still pinned down. Dr. Elena, lead the way. They moved as a unit, David carrying Rain, Agent Chen supporting Storm, and Marcus walking beside Thunder, who insisted on moving under his own power despite his injuries. Dr. Elena led them through a maze of hospital corridors, down service stairs that smelled of disinfectant and fear. Behind them, gunfire continued. Whatever forces were attacking weren't giving up easily. The service tunnel was dark, narrow, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in a sickly green glow. Thunder's breathing was labored, each step clearly agony, but he kept moving. His eyes never left Marcus. Why do they want them dead so badly? Marcus asked as they moved through the tunnel. Your father was right about the flash drive, Agent Chen explained. It contained records of illegal weapons sales, but more than that. These dogs were present when several murders were planned, including Sergeant Mitchell's. In court, With the right experts, their behavior and reactions could be used as evidence. It's unprecedented, but it could work. They emerged in the parking garage to find it seemingly empty. Too empty. Thunder growled low in his throat, his hackles rising despite his exhaustion. "It's a trap," Agent Chen whispered. Engines roared to life. 3 black SUVs screeched around the corner, boxing them in. Men in tactical gear emerged, weapons raised, but they weren't shooting, not yet. A familiar figure stepped out of the lead vehicle. The smiling man from before, though he wasn't smiling now. His face was cold, professional. "Agent Chen, you're interfering in a matter of national security." "National security?" Chen laughed bitterly. "You mean covering up murders and war crimes?" "I mean protecting ongoing operations that you couldn't begin to understand." He looked at the dogs, then at Marcus. "It's unfortunate that a child got involved, but sacrifices sometimes have to be made for the greater good." "You're going to kill a 5-year-old boy?" David stepped forward, rage radiating from every muscle. "We're going to contain a leak that threatens dozens of operatives in the field." The man's voice held no emotion. "The dogs die. Anyone who's seen the evidence dies. That's non-negotiable." Marcus felt something change in the air. Thunder had gone completely still beside him, not the stillness of fear or exhaustion. This was the stillness that came before action. The big dog's eyes were locked on something behind the vehicles. Then Marcus heard it, a low rumble that grew louder by the second. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. The garage erupted as bikes poured in from every entrance. Veterans, the same ones who'd stood guard at the hospital. But now, there were hundreds. They surrounded the SUVs, engines revving, creating a deafening wall of sound. The grizzled veteran from before removed his helmet, his prosthetic leg visible as he dismounted. "Funny thing about threatening to kill witnesses," he said conversationally. "Sometimes those witnesses have friends, brothers and sisters who bled in the same dirt, who came home broken but not beaten." "This is interference with federal operations," the smiling man said, but his confidence was cracking. "No, this is citizens protecting a child and 3 war heroes from murderers." The veteran looked at his fellow riders. "Every one of us owes our lives to military working dogs. Some of us specifically to these 3 dogs. You want them? You go through us." The smiling man reached for his weapon, but Thunder moved faster than anyone thought possible for a dog in his condition. He launched himself at the man, not to attack, but to knock the gun from his hand. It skittered across the concrete as Thunder collapsed, the effort having taken everything he had left. "Thunder!" Marcus dropped beside him, cradling the dog's massive head. "No, no, no! Stay with me." Thunder's breathing was shallow, his eyes starting to glaze. Storm and Rain crawled to him, pressing against their pack leader, whining desperately. Dr. Elena was already checking him. "He's going into shock. We need to get him back to surgery now." The smiling man made one last desperate play. "Those dogs are property of..." His words were cut off as Agent Chen's backup finally arrived. Real FBI this time, dozens of agents flooding the garage. "Actually, they're witnesses in federal custody," Chen said, flashing her badge. "And you're under arrest for attempted murder of protected witnesses." As the conspirators were arrested, Marcus never left Thunder's side. The big dog's eyes found his, and Marcus saw acceptance there. Thunder had done his duty. He'd protected them one last time. "You can't leave," Marcus sobbed. "Storm and Rain need you. I need you. Please, Thunder. Please fight." Thunder's tail moved slightly, the tiniest wag. Then his eyes closed. "No!" Marcus's scream echoed through the garage. "Wake up! Wake up!" Dr. Elena worked frantically, performing CPR on the massive dog. Storm and Rain howled, a sound of pure grief that brought tears to the eyes of hardened veterans. "Come on, soldier," the grizzled veteran muttered. "Don't give up now." For 30 seconds that felt like hours. Thunder didn't respond. Then, just as Dr. Elena was about to call it, the dog's chest moved on its own. A shallow breath, then another. "He's back, Doctor," Elena said, her voice shaking. "But barely. We need that surgery now." The veterans formed an escort, motorcycles surrounding the ambulance as Thunder was rushed back to the hospital. Marcus rode with him, his small hand never leaving the dog's fur, singing the lullaby over and over until his voice was raw. The surgery took 6 hours. Thunder had suffered internal bleeding from his heroic leap, on top of his existing organ damage. Storm and Rain were kept in the same room, where they could see the surgical suite doors. They never moved, never looked away, waiting for their leader to return. Marcus waited with them, curled between the two dogs. His father brought food he didn't eat. His grandmother came with his favorite blanket, but he gave it to Rain, who was shivering with anxiety. "Tell me about when you found them," Agent Chen said, sitting beside Marcus. She needed the full story for her report, but also, Marcus suspected, she was trying to distract him. So, Marcus told her everything, about the walk with Ruth, the crying that broke his heart, the chain that wouldn't break. He told her about Thunder letting the others eat first, about Storm's gentle eyes despite his pain, about Rain barely breathing until Marcus sang to him. "The lock," Chen said suddenly. "You said it opened a voice command. What exactly did you say?" "You deserve peace," Marcus replied. "That's what made it open." Chen pulled out her phone, making rapid notes. Sergeant Mitchell programmed that himself. He must have known. He must have suspected he wouldn't make it back. He wanted someone with compassion to find them. He wanted someone who would see them as more than weapons, Marcus said quietly. Someone who would see them as family. The surgical doors opened. Dr. Elena emerged, exhaustion written across her face, but she was smiling. "He's stable." It was touch and go, but Thunder's a fighter. He's going to make it. Storm and Rain immediately stood, tails wagging for the first time since Thunder had collapsed. When he was wheeled out, still unconscious but breathing steadily, both dogs pressed their noses gently against him, as if assuring themselves he was real. "When will he wake up?" Marcus asked. "Could be hours, could be days. His body's been through tremendous trauma." But Marcus knew better. He positioned himself where Thunder would see him first upon waking and began to sing. Within minutes, Thunder's eyes fluttered open, immediately finding Marcus's face. "Hi," Marcus whispered. "You scared me." Thunder's tail wagged weakly, and he looked at Storm and Rain, checking on his pack. Satisfied they were safe, he closed his eyes again, but this time in peaceful sleep, not unconsciousness. Agent Chen's phone rang. She listened, her expression growing grim. "I understand. Yes, sir. We'll be ready." She hung up and looked at David. "The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. The people we arrested were just foot soldiers. The real power behind this? They're mobilizing. They want those dogs dead before they can testify." "Testify?" Marcus asked. "Dogs can't testify." "Not in words," Chen explained, "but behavior experts can interpret their reactions. If we bring Thunder into a room with the men who killed his handler, his response would be admissible as evidence. It's been done before with police dogs, identifying suspects. So they are going to keep trying to kill them?" Chen nodded grimly. "Unless we can get them somewhere truly safe, witness protection, but for dogs." "Where?" David asked. "There's a military facility in Montana, completely secure, designed for protecting high-value assets. The dogs would be safe, but..." She looked at Marcus. "You couldn't go with them." "No." Marcus's voice was firm. "We don't separate. Thunder almost died when he thought he'd lost Storm and Rain. They'll die if you take them from me." "Marcus, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable." Marcus stood up, his small frame shaking with determination. "You adults keep trying to fix things by locking them up, by separating them, by using force. But love is what saved them. Love is what opened that lock. Love is what keeps them fighting." Ruth, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The boy's right. These dogs have been through enough trauma. Separating them from Marcus now would be cruel." "Then what do you suggest?" Chen asked. It was Tommy's grandfather, the locksmith, who provided the answer. He'd been listening from the doorway, having come to check on Marcus. "My brother has a ranch in Wyoming, middle of nowhere, completely off the grid. He's a veteran, has security experience. The dogs could recover there, and Marcus could stay with them." Chen considered this. "It's not official witness protection, but it might work. We could position agents nearby without being obvious. The dogs need time to heal anyway," Doctor Elena added. Somewhere quiet, without stress. A ranch would be perfect. David looked at Marcus. You'd have to leave school, leave your friends. Thunder left his whole life to protect Storm and Rain, Marcus said simply. I can leave school. The decision was made. 3 days later, when all 3 dogs were stable enough to travel, a convoy set out for Wyoming. Marcus rode an especially equipped RV with the dog's doctor, Elena monitoring their conditions. FBI agents followed at a distance, trying to look like regular traffic. Thunder spent most of the journey with his head on Marcus's lap, occasionally lifting it to check on Storm and Rain. The smallest dog had recovered the fastest, his youth working in his favor. He even played a little with a tennis ball Marcus had brought, though he tired quickly. Storm remained quiet, watchful. His wounds were healing, but Marcus sensed deeper hurt in him. Sometimes he'd whimper in his sleep, and Thunder would immediately press against him, offering comfort. They have nightmares, Marcus told Dr. Elena, about the war, about being chained, about their handler dying. How do you know? Marcus couldn't explain it. He just knew. The same way he'd known what words would open the lock. There was a connection between him and these dogs that went beyond normal understanding. The ranch was perfect. Hundreds of acres of open land, mountains in the distance, and a sturdy farmhouse that had been modified with security features by the owner, Bill, who turned out to be a former Navy SEAL. Nobody gets on this property without me knowing, Bill assured Agent Chen. Motion sensors, cameras, the works. But it all looks like normal ranch equipment. The dogs were settled in the barn initially, but by the first night, they were in the house. Thunder stationed himself by Marcus's bedroom door, Storm by the window, Rain curled at the foot of the bed. They were still weak, still healing, but they were already establishing a protective perimeter. Days turned into weeks. The dogs grew stronger. Thunder's kidneys fully recovered, Storm's infections cleared. Rain gained weight and started acting like the young dog he was, playing in the snow and chasing rabbits he was too slow to catch. Marcus spent every moment with them, learning their signals, their habits, their language. He discovered Thunder had been trained in advanced detection. He could find anything from explosives to drugs to hidden people. Storm was a tracker, able to follow scents days old. Rain, despite his youth, showed signs of being trained for search and rescue. They're not just military dogs, Bill observed one evening. They're special operations, elite. But with their recovery came revelations. Thunder began having episodes where he'd stare at empty spaces, growling at threats only he could see. Storm would sometimes freeze completely, unable to move for minutes at a time. Rain developed anxiety around loud noises. PTSD, Dr. Elena diagnosed, just like human soldiers. Marcus adapted. When Thunder had episodes, Marcus would sing the lullaby until the dog came back to the present. For Storm's freezing, Marcus would simply sit beside him, patient and quiet, until Storm could move again. For Rain's anxiety, Marcus became his anchor, the safe presence that meant everything was okay. One night, a month into their stay, the motion sensors went off. Bill checked the cameras. Nothing visible, but the dogs were all alert, hackles raised. Could be wildlife, Bill said, but he was already loading his rifle. Thunder moved to the door, his stance indicating he wanted to go out. Storm and Rain flanked him, ready for action despite their healing injuries. No, Marcus said firmly. You're not ready to fight. But Thunder looked at him with eyes that said he didn't have a choice. This was his duty. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Professional mercenaries, equipped with night vision and suppressors. They'd somehow bypassed the outer sensors, getting close to the house before being detected. Bill returned fire from an upstairs window, while Agent Chen coordinated with her backup team, still 15 minutes away. But the attackers were closing in. Thunder made a decision. Despite Marcus's protests, he burst through the dog door, Storm and Rain following. In the darkness, the 3 dogs became weapons again, using their training to confuse and disorient the attackers. Marcus watched from the window as Thunder took down one mercenary, his powerful jaws clamping on the man's weapon arm. Storm led 2 others on a chase through the dark, using his superior night vision to make them stumble and fall. Rain, smallest and fastest, darted between them, barking and nipping, never staying still long enough to be targeted. But they were still recovering, still weak. Marcus saw Thunder stumble, saw Storm's limp returning, saw Rain's exhaustion. Without thinking, Marcus ran outside. "Marcus, no!" David shouted, but the boy was already gone. Marcus stood in the yard, illuminated by the house's security lights, making himself a target. "Here!" he shouted. "I'm the one you want. The dogs are just animals. I'm the witness." The attackers hesitated, confused. Their intel had said the dogs were the primary targets. That hesitation was all Bill and Agent Chen needed. Precise shots took down 2 attackers. The dogs regrouped around Marcus, forming their protective formation. The remaining mercenaries, realizing they'd lost the element of surprise and were now outnumbered with FBI backup approaching, retreated into the darkness. "Don't ever do that again," David said, crushing Marcus in a hug that lifted him off the ground. "You could have been killed." "They would have died protecting me," Marcus said simply. "I had to protect them back." Thunder limped over, blood seeping from reopened wounds. He pressed his head against Marcus's chest, and Marcus felt the dog trembling. Not from pain, but from fear of losing the boy who'd saved him. "It's okay," Marcus whispered. "We're all okay." But Agent Chen's expression said otherwise. "This was a probe, testing our defenses. The real attack will come soon, and it'll be worse." "Then we need to go on the offensive," Bill said. "Find them before they find us again." "How?" Chen asked. It was Marcus who answered. "Thunder knows. He knows who killed Sergeant Mitchell. He can identify them." Chen's eyes lit up. "If we could get Thunder in the same room as the suspects—" "It's dangerous," David protested. "You'd be using my son and these dogs as bait." "Not bait," Marcus said. "Justice. That's what Sergeant Mitchell wanted. That's why he programmed the lock to open for someone who'd seek justice with compassion, not revenge." The plan was complex and risky. Using the intelligence from the flash drive, FBI had identified 6 men who were present when Sergeant Mitchell was murdered. They were all former military, now working for the Shadow Contractor Organization. Getting them in one place would be nearly impossible unless they think they're coming to finish the job, Chen said. "We leaked that the dogs are being moved to testify. Give them a location, a time, make it irresistible. And when they show up, Thunder identifies Mitchell's killer. We arrest them all, and the dog's testimony becomes part of the official record. After that, killing them would be pointless. Their testimony would already be documented." Marcus looked at Thunder, Storm, and Rain. All 3 were watching him, waiting for his decision, because somehow it had become his decision. These elite military dogs were following the lead of a 5-year-old boy. "We do it," Marcus said, "but on one condition. I'm there with them. They're braver when we're together." The trap was set for a week later at an abandoned military facility in Colorado. The FBI leaked information through channels they knew were compromised. The dogs would be brought there for official behavioral testimony recording before being placed in permanent witness protection. The night before, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat with the 3 dogs in the barn, all of them awake, all of them aware that tomorrow would bring either justice or death. "I'm scared," Marcus admitted to Thunder. "What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you?" Thunder stood up, moving stiffly from his healing injuries. He placed his paw on Marcus's small shoulder, looking directly into his eyes. The message was clear. We face it together. Storm pressed against Marcus's other side, and Rain climbed into his lap. They stayed like that until dawn, drawing strength from each other. The facility was a concrete maze of corridors and rooms, perfect for an ambush but also for defense. FBI agents were positioned throughout, hidden but ready. Marcus waited in a central room with the dogs, all of them wearing protective vests that Bill had somehow procured. "Remember," Agent Chen said through Marcus's earpiece, "when Thunder identifies the killer, you get down and stay down. Things will happen fast." They didn't have to wait long. The attackers came in force, 12 men, all armed, all lethal. They moved through the facility with military precision, exactly as the FBI had anticipated. When they entered the central room, Marcus was sitting on the floor with the 3 dogs around him. He looked so small, so vulnerable. Several of the men actually hesitated. "Hello?" Marcus said calmly. "We've been waiting for you." The lead man removed his tactical helmet, revealing a scarred face and cold eyes. "Smart kid. You know why we're here. To kill witnesses, Marcus said. To cover up murder. To protect national security, the man corrected. Sergeant Mitchell was going to expose operations that would have cost hundreds of American lives. Liar! Marcus stood up, his small fists clenched. He was going to expose criminals. Murderers? You? The man smiled coldly. Prove it, little boy. That's when Thunder moved. The big dog had been still as stone, but at the sight of this man's face, his entire body went rigid. A growl erupted from deep in his chest, primal and full of rage. His lips pulled back, showing teeth, and his eyes held recognition and pure hatred. Storm and Rain reacted too, but differently. They cowered behind Marcus, whimpering. They were afraid of this man specifically, not the others. That's him, Marcus said clearly, knowing the FBI was recording everything. He killed Sergeant Mitchell. Thunder recognizes him. Storm and Rain are afraid of him specifically. The scarred man's smile vanished. Stupid animals can't testify. But their behavior can be interpreted by experts. Agent Chen's voice rang out as FBI agents flooded the room. And we have it all on video. Thunder's reaction to you specifically, compared to his non-reaction to the others. It's enough for a warrant, enough to investigate, enough to find the real evidence. The scarred man reached for his weapon, but Thunder was already moving. Despite his injuries, the dog launched himself at Mitchell's killer with all the fury of his grief and loyalty. The man went down hard. Thunder's jaws locked on his arm. Thunder, release! Marcus commanded, and amazingly, Thunder obeyed, backing away but keeping his eyes locked on the killer. The arrest happened quickly. 12 men in custody, including Sergeant Mitchell's murderer. But as he was led away, the scarred man looked back at Marcus. You think you've won, boy? This goes so much higher than us. These dogs will never be safe. Neither will you. Maybe not, Marcus said, standing as tall as his 5-year-old frame would allow. But they're free. And they have family. That's more than you'll ever have. The man's face contorted with rage, but he was dragged away before he could respond. With the immediate threat neutralized and the killers arrested, the FBI moved to phase 2 of their plan. The behavioral testimony was officially recorded, with 3 separate experts confirming that Thunder's reaction indicated specific recognition and aggression toward Mitchell's killer, while Storm and Rain's fear response suggested they had witnessed him commit violence. It was unprecedented, dogs serving as witnesses to murder, but the judge allowed it as supporting evidence. Combined with the data from the flash drive and financial records the FBI uncovered, it was enough. The entire network began to unravel. But Marcus was right about one thing. The dogs were family now. The question was, what came next? 3 months later, the danger had passed. The conspiracy had been exposed, arrests made at the highest levels. The dogs were no longer targets. Their testimony was recorded, their job done. Marcus sat in a courtroom, the only child among dozens of adults. Thunder lay at his feet, Storm and Rain flanking them. They were there for the sentencing of Sergeant Mitchell's killer. Before I pass sentence, the judge said, I want to acknowledge the unusual witnesses in this case. 3 dogs who showed more loyalty and courage than most humans ever will, and a 5-year-old boy who saw past their trained purpose to their true hearts. The killer got life without parole. As he was led away, Thunder stood, watching. When the man disappeared through the door, Thunder finally relaxed, truly relaxed, for the first time since Marcus had found him. His duty to his fallen handler was complete. Outside the courthouse, Agent Chen approached Marcus and David. So, what now? The dogs are free to be adopted. They're officially retired from military service. Marcus looked at Thunder, Storm, and Rain. What do you think, guys? Want to come home with us? Thunder's tail wagged. Storm pressed against Marcus's leg. Rain did a little spin of joy. I think that's a yes, David said, smiling. But Marcus had one more question. Agent Chen, are there other dogs out there? Ones that need help like Thunder, Storm, and Rain did? Chen nodded slowly. Unfortunately, yes. Military dogs who can't adjust to civilian life. Abandoned service animals. Dogs used in fighting rings we bust. Marcus looked at his father. Dad, what if we help them? All of them? David knelt beside his son. That's a big responsibility, buddy. Thunder taught me something, Marcus said. He protected Storm and Rain even when it was killing him. That's what family does. And maybe we could be family for dogs who don't have anyone else. 1 year later, the Matthews Military Dog Sanctuary was officially opened on a property purchased with donations that poured in after Marcus's story went viral. The first residents were Thunder, Storm, and Rain, who served as ambassadors, helping other traumatized dogs adjust. Marcus, now 6, worked with the dogs every day after school. He had a gift. Everyone could see it. The way he connected with the animals, understood their trauma, helped them heal. Even the most aggressive, terrified dogs would calm when Marcus sang his mother's lullaby. Thunder never left Marcus's side, the big dog's loyalty absolute. He'd recovered fully, though he walked with a slight limp on cold days. Storm had become the sanctuary's official greeter, his gentle nature perfect for welcoming new dogs. Rain, young and energetic, played with all the newcomers, showing them that life could be joyful again. On the anniversary of their rescue, Marcus stood at the spot where he'd first found them. The old warehouse district had been transformed into a memorial park. A statue stood there now, 3 German shepherds and a small boy, with a plaque that read, "Love breaks all chains." In memory of Sergeant James Mitchell and all the handlers who gave their lives, in honor of the dogs who served and the boy who saved them. Marcus placed flowers at the base of the statue, Thunder, Storm, and Rain sitting beside him. "We did it, Mom," he whispered to the sky. "We saved them." Thunder nudged his hand, and Marcus realized the truth. They'd saved each other. As they walked home, Marcus saw a van pull up to the sanctuary. Another rescue, a German Shepherd mix, scarred and scared, abandoned after serving 3 tours in Afghanistan. "Come on, guys," Marcus said to Thunder, Storm, and Rain. "We've got work to do." The 3 dogs followed without hesitation, ready to help another lost soul find peace. Because that's what heroes do. They pass on the gift of salvation, one rescue at a time. Marcus thought about that chain he couldn't break, the lock that opened only to words of compassion. He'd learned that the strongest chains aren't made of metal. They're made of fear, trauma, and abandonment. And the only thing that can break them is love, patience, and the refusal to give up. Thunder barked once, as if agreeing with Marcus's thoughts. Storm wagged his tail. Rain ran ahead, then circled back, making sure everyone was keeping up. Together, they walked toward the new dog, ready to show him what Marcus had shown them, that no matter how dark the chain that binds you, there's always someone willing to help break it. You just have to hold on long enough for love to find you. 5 years passed. Marcus was now 10, and the sanctuary had grown to house over 50 dogs. He'd become something of a legend in military and veterinary circles, the boy who could reach the unreachable dogs. Thunder was getting older, his muzzle gray now, his steps slower. But his devotion to Marcus never wavered. He'd trained Marcus in all his military skills, detection, tracking, protection. Not because Marcus needed to be a soldier, but because it was Thunder's way of passing on his legacy. Storm had become a therapy dog, visiting veterans' hospitals with Marcus. His gentle presence had helped dozens of soldiers dealing with PTSD. He seemed to understand their pain in a way only a fellow warrior could. Rain had surprised everyone by becoming a search and rescue dog for the local fire department. His youth and energy, combined with his military training, made him invaluable. He'd saved 3 lives in the past year alone. But today was special. Today, Sergeant Mitchell's widow was visiting the sanctuary for the first time. She'd been too grief-stricken before, but she'd finally found the strength to meet the dogs her husband had died trying to protect. Mrs. Mitchell was a small woman with kind eyes that held deep sadness. When she saw Thunder, she gasped. "Oh my God, he looks just like he did in James's photos." Thunder approached her slowly, his tail wagging gently. He sniffed her hand, then did something he'd never done with anyone except Marcus. He rested his head in her lap. "He remembers your scent," Marcus explained. "From Sergeant Mitchell's clothes, probably." Mrs. Mitchell broke down crying, hugging Thunder, while Storm and Rain pressed close, offering their own comfort. "James loved these dogs more than anything," she sobbed. "He used to write me about them, about how Thunder was so protective, how Storm was so gentle, how Rain was so eager to learn." She pulled out a worn envelope. "I brought something. James wrote this letter for whoever saved his dogs. He knew, somehow he knew someone would." Marcus opened the letter with trembling hands and read aloud. To the guardian angel who saved my boys, if you're reading this, it means Thunder, Storm, and Rain found their way to safety. It means someone saw, passed their training to their hearts. Thank you. These dogs aren't just military assets, they're family. Thunder saved my life 13 times. Storm stayed by my side through a 3-day firefight when I was wounded. Rain was just a pup, but he already showed the heart of a hero. I knew my investigation would likely get me killed, but I couldn't let these dogs pay for my choices. The lock, the chain, it was the only way I could think to protect them after I was gone. I programmed it to open only for someone who understood that peace isn't just the absence of war, it's the presence of love. Take care of them. Let them know they're good dogs. Let them know they mattered. And thank you from a grateful soldier who can rest in peace knowing his brothers are safe. Sergeant James Mitchell. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Thunder stood up and walked to a corner of the room where he pawed at something hidden under a dog bed. He pulled out a worn military cap, Mitchell's cap that he'd somehow hidden and kept all these years. He brought it to Mrs. Mitchell, laying it gently in her lap. He kept it, she whispered. All this time, through everything, he kept James's cap. Marcus realized then that Thunder's story with Sergeant Mitchell was a love story. The love between a soldier and his dog, a bond that transcended death itself. And now, that love had expanded to include him, a little boy who'd simply refused to walk away from suffering. As the sun set over the sanctuary, Marcus stood surrounded by dogs and people who'd become family. Thunder leaned against his leg, Storm sat at his side, Rain played with the newest rescues. Mrs. Mitchell had decided to volunteer at the sanctuary, finding healing and caring for the dogs her husband had loved. "You know what Thunder taught me?" Marcus said to Mrs. Mitchell. "He taught me that being a hero isn't about being the strongest or the bravest. It's about protecting others even when you're scared, even when you're hurt, even when the chain seems impossible to break." Thunder looked up at him with those wise old eyes, and Marcus could swear the dog was smiling. That night, as Marcus lay in bed with Thunder beside him, the dog had never spent a night away from him in 5 years. Storm at the foot of the bed, and Rain by the window, he thought about that day by the fence. 3 German shepherds crying beside a chain they couldn't break. He'd been just a 5-year-old boy who couldn't stand to see suffering. Now he was 10, running a sanctuary that had saved hundreds of dogs. All because he'd stopped to help, because he'd refused to accept that the chain couldn't be broken. Thunder sighed contentedly in his sleep, his paw resting on Marcus's arm. Storm's gentle snoring filled the room. Rain's tail twitched as he dreamed, probably chasing rabbits. They were home. They were safe. They were loved. And somewhere, Marcus was certain, Sergeant James Mitchell was smiling, knowing his boys had found their peace at last. The next morning brought unexpected news. The President of the United States would be visiting the sanctuary. Thunder, Storm, and Rain were to receive the Military Working Dog Medal of Courage, the highest honor a military dog could receive. "They deserve it," Agent Chen said, having stayed in touch over the years. "But also, Marcus, the President wants to meet you. You're getting a Presidential Citizen's Medal for your role in exposing the conspiracy and saving these heroes." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," David said firmly. "You did what Marcus would do. What a boy with his mother's heart and his own courage would do." The ceremony was held at the sanctuary with hundreds of veterans, families, and rescued dogs in attendance. Thunder, Storm, and Rain sat proudly as medals were placed around their necks. Despite his age and gray muzzle, Thunder held himself at attention, every inch the soldier he'd always been. When it was Marcus's turn, the President knelt to his level. "Son, you've shown us that heroism has no age limit. That compassion is the greatest strength. That love truly can break any chain." As Marcus accepted his medal, Thunder barked once, sharp and clear. Storm and Rain joined in, and soon every dog at the sanctuary was barking, howling, celebrating. "I think they approve," the President laughed. Later, as the crowds dispersed and quiet returned to the sanctuary, Marcus sat with his 3 dogs, looking at their medals. "We've come a long way from that chain-link fence," he said softly. Thunder rested his gray head on Marcus's lap. Storm pressed against his side. Rain, still young enough to be playful, tried to steal Thunder's medal, starting a gentle game of tug-of-war that made everyone laugh. Mrs. Mitchell approached, holding a small box. "Marcus, I want you to have this." James would have wanted Thunder's partner to have it. Inside was Sergeant Mitchell's dog tag and a photo of him with Thunder, Storm, and Rain in Afghanistan. They all looked so young, so strong, ready to face anything together. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, understanding the weight of this gift. As the sun set on this momentous day, Marcus made a decision. "Dad, I want to start a program, teaching kids how to help traumatized dogs, showing them what Thunder, Storm, and Rain taught me." "That's a wonderful idea," David said. "What will you call it?" Marcus looked at his 3 dogs, his heroes, his family. "The Chain Breakers. Because every dog deserves someone who won't give up on them. Every chain can be broken with enough love." Thunder's tail thumped against the ground in approval. Storm nuzzled Marcus's hand. Rain barked excitedly, ready for the next adventure. And so it began, the Chain Breakers program, where children learn to heal dogs and dogs learn to trust again. Where chains of fear and trauma were replaced with bonds of love and understanding. Marcus stood at the entrance to the sanctuary, his 3 German shepherds beside him, watching as the first group of children arrived for the program. Some were shy, some were scared, some had their own traumas to heal. "Remember," Marcus told them, "these dogs were crying beside a chain they couldn't break, but love found a way. Love always finds a way." Thunder walked forward, approaching the most withdrawn child in the group, a girl who hadn't spoken since her father died in military service. He sat beside her, patient and calm, offering his presence without demanding anything in return. The girl's hand slowly reached out, touching Thunder's fur. "Pretty dog," she whispered, her first words in 6 months. Marcus smiled, tears in his eyes. The chain was breaking already. Years would pass. Thunder would eventually cross the Rainbow Bridge, passing peacefully in his sleep with Marcus holding him, whispering the lullaby one last time. Storm and Rain would live many more years, training countless other dogs, comforting countless humans. Marcus would grow up to become a veterinarian, specializing in traumatized military and service dogs. The sanctuary would expand nationwide. The Chain Breakers program would help thousands of children and dogs heal together. But it all started with a 5-year-old boy who heard crying and couldn't walk away, who saw 3 German shepherds beside a chain they couldn't break, and decided that love was stronger than any lock. On the 10th anniversary of the rescue, an elderly Storm and Rain sat with teenage Marcus at Thunder's grave at the sanctuary. The headstone read, "Thunder, soldier, hero, friend." He protected everyone but himself until a little boy taught him he was worth protecting too. "We miss you, buddy," Marcus said softly, "but we're carrying on your mission. Every dog we save, every chain we break, it's for you." Storm and Rain howled softly, a sound that carried across the sanctuary, where dozens of rescued dogs joined in, a chorus of the saved honoring the one who'd started it all. As they walked back to the main building, Marcus saw a new arrival. 3 puppies, abandoned and scared, huddled together for comfort. He knelt beside them, and they cowered away. "It's okay," he said gently, beginning to sing the lullaby his mother had taught him, the one that had saved Thunder, Storm, and Rain. "You're safe now. You're loved, and no chain will ever hold you again." One puppy, the smallest, crept forward, drawn by the kindness in Marcus's voice. Just like Rain had been, all those years ago. Storm and Rain watched approvingly as Marcus worked his magic once again. The legacy continued. The chains kept breaking. Love kept winning. And somewhere, in whatever comes after for the brave souls of military dogs, Thunder stood watch, proud of the boy who'd saved him, and became the man who saved hundreds more. The chain by the fence had been made of metal and cruelty, but the bonds forged that day were made of something unbreakable, the love between a boy and 3 dogs, who needed each other more than any of them could have imagined. This was their story, a story of chains broken and hearts healed, a story that proved that sometimes the smallest hands can lift the heaviest burdens, and the youngest voices can sing the strongest songs of hope. Marcus looked at the sanctuary full of rescued dogs, at Storm and Rain still by his side, at the children learning to heal and be healed. He thought of Thunder, of Sergeant Mitchell, of his mother who'd given him the lullaby that started it all. "Thank you," he whispered to all of them. "Thank you for teaching me that love breaks all chains." Storm barked once in agreement. Rain wagged his tail. And in the wind through the trees, Marcus could almost hear Thunder's approving rumble, watching over them all, forever the protector, forever the hero, forever family. The story of the 3 German shepherds crying beside a chain they couldn't break had become legend. But for Marcus, it was simpler than that. It was the day he learned that you don't have to be big to make a big difference. You just have to care enough to try. And he would keep trying, keep caring, keep breaking chains for the rest of his life. Because that's what love does. It sees suffering and says, not on my watch. It faces impossibility and says, watch me. It breaks chains that seem unbreakable and builds bonds that are truly unbreakable. 3 German shepherds had been crying beside a chain they couldn't break. One 5-year-old boy had shown them they were worth saving. Together, they'd shown the world that no chain is stronger than love. Ender spår stickstamt. Tindog. If this incredible story touched your heart, if you felt tears in your eyes as Marcus and these 3 heroic dogs found each other, please hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who needs to know that love really can break any chain. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a special bond with a dog who changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story of hope, courage, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Remember, you don't have to be big to make a big difference. Sometimes all it takes is refusing to walk away from someone who needs help. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep breaking chains with love.